Marie had always been a woman of quiet dignity, a graceful presence who wore her age like a well-tailored coat, comfortable, yet marked with the subtle signs of a life lived fully, though not without its share of regret and yearning. In her early 50s, she carried herself with a calm confidence that seemed to defy the years, but beneath the surface was a heart still hungry for passion, for the kind of wild abandon she thought was long behind her. That hunger found a startling answer in Luca, a man barely 25 with eyes like storm clouds and a smile that promised rebellion. They met at a small art exhibit where Marie worked part-time. Luca was there to meet a friend but found himself drawn to Marie's quiet intensity, the way her laughter softened the edges of the evening. What started as a casual conversation quickly became a series of stolen moments, secret coffees, late-night walks under city lights, whispered promises that neither fully believed but both desperately wanted to be true. Their affair was a tempest, a collision of two worlds separated by decades but connected by an electric current of desire and loneliness. For Marie, Luca was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that she was still alive and desired. For Luca, Marie was a refuge from the chaos of youth, a sanctuary where he felt seen and understood. But every secret carries its own weight, and Luca's girlfriend, Emma, was no stranger to suspicion. Jealous and fierce, she sensed the shift in Luca's attention, the softening of his gaze when he thought she wasn't watching. Her world darkened with the shadows of betrayal, her love twisting into something sharp and vengeful. When she finally uncovered the truth, texts, photographs, moments captured in quiet corners, she was consumed by a fury that erased all reason. Emma took to the internet, a digital battlefield where she unleashed their affair like a wildfire, exposing intimate details to friends, family, and strangers alike. The aftermath was devastating. Marie's life, once orderly and discreet, was shattered under the weight of public scrutiny. Colleagues at the gallery whispered behind her back. Old friends distanced themselves. Even her daughter confronted her with disbelief and hurt. Luca was torn apart, caught between the flames of his past and the wreckage of his present, as the world he knew crumbled. Yet amid the chaos there was a strange clarity. Marie realized that the affair, for all its pain and scandal, had awakened something within her, a fierce, unyielding strength. She began to rebuild. Not by erasing her mistakes but by embracing them, learning to love herself beyond the judgment of others. Luca too found his way out of the darkness, though the scars remained. Emma, in her quest for vengeance, discovered that rage was a lonely companion, and forgiveness, though distant, was the path to her own healing. Years later their lives would cross again, not as enemies or lovers, but as fragments of a shared history that shaped who they had become. In that meeting, beneath the quiet hum of a cafe and the soft glow of fading daylight, they would find not reconciliation but a mutual understanding, that some passions burn bright and fierce but must eventually give way to the steady flame of self-acceptance and peace. Marie's days after the online exposure blurred together in a haze of shame and disbelief. She woke each morning to a flood of messages, some harsh, some curious, most laced with judgment, and found herself retreating deeper into the quiet corners of her apartment, a sanctuary that suddenly felt more like a cage. Yet despite the pain, there was an undeniable thrill in the memory of Luca's touch, his laugh echoing in her mind like a secret melody only she could hear. She remembered the first time they had kissed under the dim light of the gallery's backroom, where the scent of turpentine and old wood mingled with the warmth of his breath on her skin. "You make me feel alive," she had whispered, half afraid he might laugh at her vulnerability. Luca had smiled, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw gently. "You already are, Marie. You just forgot." But even as she clung to these moments, reality intruded with brutal force. Her daughter confronted her, voice trembling with hurt and disbelief. "How could you, Mom? How could you throw everything away for him?" Marie's throat tightened, words failing her. There was no excuse, no justification that could soothe the sting in her daughter's eyes. Meanwhile, Luca was drowning in his own turmoil. He wanted to reach out to Marie to say that none of it was her fault, but guilt silenced him. Emma's public shaming was relentless. Friends he had known since childhood turned their backs, whispers of betrayal following him like a shadow. In quiet nights he strummed his guitar, melodies bleeding out pain and longing, his music becoming the only language left to express what words could not. Emma found herself trapped by the fire she had ignited. Her anger, once a fierce shield, began to corrode her from within. The social media applause she sought gave way to whispers about her cruelty, about the girl who destroyed what she couldn't keep. One night, scrolling through the endless comments and messages, she paused on a photo of Marie, serene and unbroken despite everything. A strange ache stirred inside her, not just anger but a bitter, aching loneliness. Over time, Marie's strength grew in unexpected ways. She started attending photography classes, her camera lens a new way to see and understand the world. She captured moments of everyday beauty: children playing in rain puddles, the weathered hands of an elderly man, a stray cat curling up in a sunbeam, finding in these images a quiet resilience that mirrored her own. Luca moved cities, seeking distance from the chaos, and found work teaching music to teenagers. Their youthful enthusiasm and unfiltered passion for life reminded him of the hope he once carried. Years later, by chance, their paths crossed in a small cafe filled with soft jazz and warm light. Marie looked up from her coffee and their eyes met, not with the heat of old passion, but with the gentle recognition of two souls who had endured storms and survived. They talked then not as lovers but as kindred spirits, acknowledging the past without bitterness. "We were reckless," Luca said softly, "but maybe we just needed to learn how to be whole on our own first." Marie nodded, a smile touching her lips. "Sometimes the hardest love is the one we have to give ourselves." Somewhere in the quiet distance, Emma watched this reunion unfold on a social media feed, her heart stirring with the faintest hope that one day, she too might find peace beyond the ashes of jealousy and pain. It began on a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the city exhales a soft golden haze and the scent of damp leaves mingles with the sharp tang of early frost. Marie was at the gallery opening, standing quietly beside her favorite painting, a muted landscape that somehow captured the melancholy she often felt but rarely spoke aloud. Luca had arrived late, tangled in the kind of youthful energy that made him stand out among the polished crowd. His eyes roamed the room until they landed on Marie, who seemed to absorb the art like it was a part of her own story. Their first conversation was cautious, a dance of polite questions and tentative smiles, but beneath the surface crackled an undeniable electricity. "You have a way of seeing things," Luca said softly, nodding toward the painting. Marie looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Sometimes I think the world reveals itself only to those who dare to look closely," she replied. From that moment, their lives began to entwine in a tapestry woven from stolen afternoons and whispered confessions. Luca, with his restless spirit and uncertain future, found in Marie a calm harbor. Marie, with her carefully constructed life and hidden longings, discovered in Luca a spark that reignited dreams she thought had withered long ago. They met in cafes smelling of strong coffee and old books, wandered through quiet parks where the crunch of leaves underfoot was their soundtrack, and sometimes simply sat together in silence, the space between them filled with unspoken understanding. But as their connection deepened, so did the risk. Luca's girlfriend Emma, once patient and loving, grew restless and suspicious. Late one night, fueled by sleepless hours and a heart breaking with jealousy, Emma scoured Luca's messages until she found the threads that tied him to Marie, texts full of tenderness and promises that shattered her world. In a moment of raw desperation, she shared everything online, the intimate details laid bare for all to see. The fallout was swift and merciless. Marie's phone rang constantly, messages piling up from friends and strangers alike, many cruel, some pleading for explanations. Her professional reputation teetered on the edge as the whispers grew louder, and she felt the cold sting of isolation deepen with each passing day. Luca, torn between shame and desire, tried to reach out, but Emma's fury was a wall neither time nor words could break down. Nights were the hardest. Memories of Marie haunted his dreams, their laughter and touches like echoes from another life. Emma's pain was a fierce blaze that consumed her from within, transforming love into something unrecognizable, a tempest of rage and regret. In the years that followed, each of them wandered through the ruins of their shared past. Marie embraced solitude but refused to be broken, channeling her pain into art, capturing moments of fragile beauty that reminded her life was more than scandal. Luca found solace in teaching, his music a balm for wounds that words could not heal, while Emma grappled with the emptiness left by her own choices. Fate, however, is rarely content to let stories end quietly. One winter evening, under the soft glow of street lamps and falling snow, Marie and Luca's paths crossed again in that little cafe where time seemed to fold in on itself. Their eyes met, not with the fire of old passion but with the calm understanding of two souls who had learned the cost of love and the grace of forgiveness. "We were young and reckless," Luca whispered, "but maybe it was the only way we could learn to grow." Marie smiled softly. "Sometimes the greatest love is the one we give ourselves." And in that moment, beneath the hum of the city and the warmth of a shared cup of coffee, they found peace, not in each other but within themselves. Emma had always been the kind of woman who loved fiercely, sometimes too fiercely, with a heart that wore its emotions like a second skin, raw, vulnerable, and easily bruised. When Luca first came into her life, he was everything she wanted: bright, passionate, seemingly devoted. Their early days were filled with late-night talks and dreams spun like delicate webs of possibility, and she believed in the future they imagined together with a naive certainty that only youth can afford. But as the months slipped by, the small cracks began to appear: Luca's distracted glances at his phone, the occasional late arrival home with vague excuses, and the growing distance she felt but couldn't name. Her intuition, sharp and unrelenting, told her something was wrong, but she pushed the doubt aside until one night, when a friend accidentally let slip a detail about a woman Luca had been seen with, a woman older than either of them had expected. Fueled by a mixture of fear and anger, Emma's nights became restless battles with herself, each sleepless hour a spiral into suspicion. She scoured his messages, piecing together the truth with a horror that made her stomach churn: texts brimming with affection, photographs stolen in secret, whispers of passion shared in shadows. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound she had known, unraveling the trust she had built so carefully. In a moment of heartbreak and fury, she made the choice to expose their affair online, to strip away the secrecy and force the truth into the harsh light of day. The digital storm that followed swept through their lives with a violence she hadn't anticipated. She watched as Luca's world fractured, as Marie's composed facade crumbled, and as her own friends recoiled from the intensity of her pain. But the victory she thought she would taste was bitter and hollow. The applause of strangers was drowned out by the quiet loneliness that settled over her nights, and she found herself haunted not just by what had been lost but by what she had become: the girl who tore others down to protect herself but only ended up destroying her own heart. Slowly, painfully, Emma began to understand that her rage was a prison, and forgiveness, though distant and difficult, was the key to unlocking it. She sought therapy, confided in friends who had not abandoned her, and started to rebuild her identity outside the shadow of Luca and Marie. It was a journey marked by setbacks and small victories, moments of despair balanced by glimmers of hope. Years later, as she scrolled through her social media feed and saw a photo of Marie and Luca sitting quietly in a cafe, she felt a strange stirring, a mixture of sadness, acceptance, and an unspoken wish for peace that extended beyond herself. In time, Emma found her own path to healing, not by forgetting or erasing the past, but by embracing it as part of the complex tapestry that made her who she was. She learned that love could break you open and build you anew, that jealousy could give way to compassion, and that sometimes the most courageous act was to forgive, not for others but for yourself. After the storm of exposure and heartbreak, Marie found herself retreating from the world, her once vibrant life dulled to muted tones. But it was through the lens of her camera that she began to reclaim her identity piece by piece. The shutter's click became a rhythm that steadied her racing heart, a meditation that drew her out of the darkness. Each photograph she took was a small act of defiance against the chaos that had engulfed her, a way to capture beauty in a world that had felt cruel and unforgiving. She wandered through the city streets, her eyes drawn to moments others overlooked: the way light filtered through rain-soaked windows, a child's laughter echoing across a park bench, the quiet dignity of an old woman's hands folded in her lap. Through her art, Marie discovered a language beyond words, one that spoke of resilience, tenderness, and the human capacity to find grace amid pain. She enrolled in photography classes, eager to refine her craft and connect with others who shared her passion. The classroom buzzed with youthful energy, and while she sometimes felt out of place among the students half her age, their enthusiasm was contagious, and she found joy in sharing her perspective and learning new techniques. It was there that she met Simon, a gentle man in his 30s with a love for black and white film and a quiet encouragement that felt like a balm to her wounded soul. Simon didn't ask for explanations or apologies. He simply saw her as an artist and a woman worthy of kindness. Their friendship grew slowly, blossoming from shared photo walks and long conversations about light and shadow, loss and hope. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world was still and her mind threatened to spiral, Marie's camera was her anchor. She began a personal project, an intimate portrait series capturing people who, like her, had weathered storms and emerged changed but unbroken. Each subject's story was etched into the frame: the man who had lost everything in a fire but found community in rebuilding, the woman who survived illness and now painted sunsets to celebrate life, the teenager learning to dance despite scars that told of pain. Through these images, Marie found solidarity and strength, a reminder that she was not alone in her journey. Slowly, the sharp edges of shame softened into something more nuanced, a complicated blend of regret, acceptance, and gratitude for the lessons learned. Her work was eventually exhibited in a small gallery, the opening night filled with quiet admiration and new connections. Among the attendees was Luca, who had heard of her project through mutual friends and felt compelled to see the art that had once been their shared language. Their reunion was unhurried and gentle, a testament to growth rather than rekindled passion. They spoke of the past with honesty, but the focus was on the present, a place where forgiveness and understanding could finally take root. Marie realized then that her affair with Luca, though painful, had opened a door to a new chapter of her life, one where she could embrace both her vulnerabilities and her strengths. With each click of her camera, she rewrote her story, transforming heartbreak into beauty and despair into hope. Luca's world had once been a whirlwind of sound and sensation, the rush of adrenaline that came from youthful passion and reckless choices blending with the steady pulse of music that had always been his refuge. As a boy, he had found in his guitar a voice when words failed him, a way to express the chaos and tenderness inside, the hopes that soared as high as his doubts threatened to pull him under. But after the affair unraveled and Emma's betrayal exploded online, the music that once sustained him seemed to falter, drowned beneath waves of guilt and regret that left him hollow and adrift. The silence in his apartment was oppressive, a reminder of everything he had lost and everything he had yet to forgive in himself. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Luca returned to his guitar, his fingers stumbling at first over the strings, uncertain and raw. Yet with each note, each melody tentatively strummed into life, he felt the beginnings of a fragile peace. Music became his sanctuary, a place where pain could be transformed into something beautiful, where the ghosts of his past could be given shape and meaning without judgment. He began writing songs that told stories of love and loss, of the bittersweet ache that comes with growing up too fast and loving too deeply. His small apartment filled with chords and lyrics, each piece a fragment of his journey toward redemption. Encouraged by a mentor, Luca started teaching guitar lessons to local kids, sharing not only his skills but the lessons he had learned about vulnerability and resilience. In their eager faces he found a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that his mistakes did not define him and that music could heal even the deepest wounds. One day at a community open mic night, Luca played a song inspired by his time with Marie, a haunting melody that spoke of fleeting beauty and enduring hope. The applause was warm but quiet, the kind that comes not from fame but from honest connection. Afterwards, Marie approached him, her eyes reflecting the same mix of nostalgia and acceptance that he felt deep within. They talked for hours, no longer as lovers caught in the fire of passion, but as two souls who had grown through pain and found strength in forgiveness. Their shared history was no longer a burden but a bridge, a testament to the complexity of love and the possibility of new beginnings. Luca knew the road ahead would not be without challenges, but with music as his guide and the lessons of the past as his compass, he was ready to face whatever came next, one note, one step at a time.